What was your thinking about going to college? Is this something you just always thought you would be doing?
Oh yes, absolutely.
And had your sister had gone to
Well,
college?
my sister, my mother went to Hunter College when it was in the Bronx, which is now Lehman. My sister went to Hunter College downtown, and I started out going to Hunter College downtown. It was the only college I applied to, even because it was where I wanted to be. Um, and yeah, that's. I always knew that that was where I wanted to go. So.
And how long were you there?
I was there from the fall of 1990 until technically until the end of the spring of '93.
So that meant you finished your junior year?
Yeah, I was in my junior year when I transferred to Manhattan College.
And why did you want to transfer?
Because Hunter College was already a drain. It was very taxing. I did not know about the Metro North rail system. Had I known about that, I mean, Metro North is great. It gets you downtown in a half an hour. I was taking the express bus, which took an hour and a half to get between Riverdale and 68th Street. And in addition to that, you know, I would have to wait outside in the snow at night waiting for a bus. There were a lot of times when I had like maybe one course in a day, so I would just skip going downtown. I mean, mind you, my grade point average for the most part while I was there was you know like 380 whatever, but I mean my first year over there I had a 391 average, but it just started to take a toll, and not only that, Hunter College had this horrific bureaucracy. Though as what was it? As my friends joked, there are only three places where communism still survives today: Russia, China, and Hunter College. It was this horrific bureaucracy over there, and I mean, but I still participated. I was an NCAA fencer. I was on the fencing team. I was a member of the Hunter College Senate, representing the music department. I was a music major while I was there, and a classics minor, which is basically a guarantee never to get a job, aside from teaching music.
So really, when you were switching to Manhattan, it was because of where it was?
Well, my sister was a graduate student there. She was going for her master's degree. I think she may have started out with a master's degree, the intent of getting a master's degree in education, but she ended up getting a master's degree in counseling in the education department. And she said, "You got to come over here because," you know, she said, "this is nothing like Hunter College." So I put in an application, and I met with the people at admissions, and things went well, and I was accepted to Hunter College, and
You mean to Manhattan?
I mean to Manhattan College, and yeah, the unfortunate part is that my sister was working with kids at the time. She got the chicken pox, and then 2 weeks later, I got the chicken pox. So my entire spring 1993 semester at Hunter College had to be canceled out. And I just never went back, except to get transcripts and things like that.
So when you transferred to Manhattan College, did you have to switch your major, or what was?
Yes, I did. They didn't have a music major at Manhattan College, no. I originally put in to be an English major, but my advisor told me, you know, she said, well, you have to take certain, you know, there are certain courses that you have to take. Everybody loves this one. It's called Film as Art. Brother Michael Sevastakis is the professor. People, you know, enjoy his class. So I took Film as Art, and that was it. I was a communications major, concentrating in film and broadcasting.
And that's what you graduated in?
That's what I graduated with, yeah.
I just wanted to ask, starting at 81 and going all the way through, except I guess at the yeshiva, did you experience any anti-Semitism in any of your schools?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. First of all, starting out in PS 81, at the earliest ages, I mean, first of all, while most of the Catholic students were leaving on Wednesday for CCD at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I was one of the few people left behind. I was one of the few people that were recognizably Jewish. Even the Jewish, kids who were in my class, they were all Reform, so they fit in, to the Christian community very well. I came from a traditionalist Jewish background, so I was a bit different. And yeah, people made fun of my name. It was 81 was kind of horrible. 141 was fairly horrible. It was 141. I don't think I've ever met anyone who went to 141 who's ever had a good experience there. I know people I've actually met people who went there in the 60s and still shudder to think of 141. The only thing is that when I went to 141, there was a lot of racial tension. And I was in the Hebrew class. So that was different.
Kennedy?
At Kennedy, no, there was no real anti-Semitism at Kennedy, no.
And in college?
Well, in college, it's interesting. In college, I was actually, a friend of mine poured on the anti-Semitism, actually for my benefit, to toughen me up to anti-Semites, so that every time somebody cracked an anti-Jewish joke, I didn't go flying over the table to to beat the guy up.
This was while you were at Hunter?
This was while I was at Hunter, yeah. My best friend was a Vietnam vet. He was in the Navy, and he was from North Carolina. So he kind of poured it on just to get me desensitized to it. When I was at Manhattan College, yeah, there was an undercurrent of anti-Semitism coming from quite a few places. Now, some people were great. First of all, I had Brother Robert Berger. I'm still friends with him. Brother Robert's a great guy. There's not an anti-Semitic bone in his body. Some of the anti-Semitism came from the students. For example, when I was taking, Roots of American Culture or something like that. It was one of the required, one of the required courses. It was something like Roots of American Society. I had a fairly ignorant professor by the name of Dolores DeManuel. For example, when I said that Hunter College had 30,000 students, she laughed. She's like, "That's impossible. There's no such thing as a college with 30,000 students." Yeah, at Hunter College there is, because you have day session full-time students, day session part-time students, evening session full-time students, evening session part-time students. And it's like my friend John, the one who was the Vietnam vet from North Carolina. He basically described Hunter College like a big airport, where it has escalators and people were just sitting there waiting to get to their class and then waiting to go home. and I would think that I would know that, being having been a senator at Hunter College representing the music department. But she laughed that off, and then she made a joke. Was when the Holocaust Museum in Washington D.C. opened. She made a joke that the class snickered at, that the Holocaust Museum was built on the site of the Bureau of Printing and Engraving. You know, Jews and money. So the class started snickering and laughing and all that.
Were there other Jewish students there at Manhattan that you would know
of? There may have been one or two, yeah.
What year did you graduate?
Well, it's funny. I finished my classes in December of 1995, and I actually had a class ring that said 95, but they stopped having December graduations sometime around when I got there. So I ended up graduating in February '96. I was sort of held over into the next year for the class of '96.
And when did your sister finish there?
She finished, I believe in either '94 or '95. But then she got a job in the counseling department, in the job as a career counselor.
So she worked in Manhattan.
Yeah, so she worked in Manhattan.
So when did your father start getting involved at Manhattan College?
Well, my father started getting involved in Manhattan College, actually, I think it was basically a few months before I started there. There was a professor by the name of Estelle Freiberg, who was teaching a class, and she put together a little symposium on people's experiences during World War II. So she invited my father to speak. She invited Rentaro Hashimoto to speak, and she invited Friedrich Switzer to speak. And they all spoke on their experiences with World War II, each one coming at it from a very different perspective.
So is that when your father met Fred Switzer?
Yes, that is when my father met Fred Switzer.
And I know he worked with him helping to start the Holocaust Center in 1996.
Yes. Yeah, my father,
So that's just about when you were leaving, he was
yeah.
helping to start the center.
Well, my father started speaking to classes while I was there. He would speak to religion classes. There was a religion professor by the name of Donald Gray, and he would speak at Professor Gray's classes. And he...
How did you feel about him being sort of on campus where you were?
Oh, it was fine with me.
Did you ever go to any of these?
No, I didn't.
Because you weren't taking those classes.
Right, yeah. My father spoke, I believe what's his name? Donald Gray's Death as a Fact of Life class. Now, I took Death as a Fact of Life with Thomas McGowan. My father didn't speak at that. But I believe my father spoke at some of McGowan's classes after I was McGowan's student.
Did you ever get feedback from other students who had heard your father? Did they connect you with him?
Not really, not while I was there.
So when you were getting toward graduating, what was your thought about what to do next following college?
Well, following college, having been a film concentration major, I wanted to work in film, and I actually applied into NYU Film School, and I put in my down payment deposit on my seat and all that. My sister said that she would pay for whatever she told me to go for. She said that she'd pay for whatever student aid didn't cover. Well, student aid covered half of it, and then about 2 weeks before the semester was supposed to begin, My sister was like, well, I'm not paying that. So I had to go down there on a rainy day, down into the, the film department was on the lower level below the bookstore, and get my deposit back. I mean, there was, what is it, there were like, something like 3,000 people who apply, 3,500, maybe even 10,000 people who apply. And there are, 40 seats? And
Did you feel this was something you couldn't ask your parents to help with?
No, they couldn't help with it.
Did you always, when you grew up, did you feel that they were having trouble, with money, that they were just keeping on top of things but not able to go beyond?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah, and your father was working as you grew up.
Yes, my father not only was working, but he was also the president of the men's club at the Conservative Synagogue. And he went from being president of the men's club at the Conservative Synagogue to being vice president of the metropolitan region of the United, the United Federation of Men's Clubs or whatever. So my father was not around a lot when I was growing up, because he would come home from work, at about 5:30, 6 o'clock, at about 6 o'clock, let's say, and then he would scarf down dinner, and then he would be out to the synagogue. So yeah, he wasn't around a lot. He was when I was let's say going to 141 or in my later stages at PS 81.
So did your mother work at all?
Yes, my mother was a teacher at PS 27 on St. Anne's Avenue and 148th Street for 33 years. She was, at one point she was the union chapter chairperson. She received the Trachtenberg Award for that. And towards the end, she was the librarian for most of that time. She started out teaching first grade and second grade. That was in 1958. Then she became the librarian, and after a while, towards the end of her career, she became a master teacher trainer, training new teachers for the job.
And your sister is involved in education also?
Yes, actually my sister's first education job was at PS 27. She taught, I believe, third graders.
You never thought of going into teaching?
Oh, I thought about how not to go into teaching.
You didn't want to do that?
No.
So then you were stymied in the film, going to film school, so
Right.
what did you do?
Well, I ended up, I got Backstage magazine, and I entered an ad that was in the back of Backstage, and I ended up working on Bollywood productions filming in New York. And I went from being a production assistant to being the locations consultant, to being the director of sales, to being the director of development for this film company, Apple Productions.
And did you ever go on to any kind of graduate school?
Oh, sure, yeah. I realized that wasn't getting me anywhere, so what I did was I applied to a couple of graduate programs. I ended up choosing the political management program at George Washington University down in Washington, D.C.
And how long is that program?
That was a 2-year program, and I ended up living in Washington, D.C. for 3 years. And if you want to talk about anti-Semitism, Washington, D.C. is the place. In my last year, we had to take a course with the dean of the school, a guy by the name of F. Christopher Arterton. And his wife, believe it or not, is a federal judge in Connecticut. Well, F. Christopher Arterton, during his class, there were a couple of remarks that that should have let me know where he stood. For example, we used to game things out. Basically, we used to do strategy games. This was advanced strategy. And what was it? In one game, there was a Jewish girl who the prize was a Chipwich thing. Now, this was actually during Passover of 1998. Yeah. No, Passover of 1999, I'm sorry. Anyway, so she won the game, and he gave her the Chipwich, and she started eating it, and he said, "Oh my, how quickly we brush aside our traditions." And then when he was talking about how the Graduate School of Political Management came from New York down to George Washington University, the founder of the School of Political Management and Joel Trachtenberg, who was the chancellor of the university, he described them. He said, "Well, you know how these things are with these people. They meet together with their Brooklyn heritage, and they hash things out the way they do things." So that should have given me a clue right there. Anyway, after I graduated, I was having a hard time getting a job on Capitol Hill, because at that time I was in Republican circles, and a Jew from New York City was not exactly welcome in Republican circles. So I asked him for advice. This was on a Wednesday. He said, "You know what? Contact me on Friday." He said, "I'm going to think about this. Contact me on Friday, and I'll tell you what my opinion is." So I called him that Friday, and I asked, so what advice do you have? He said, "I think that you should limit your job search to Zionist organizations," and he hung up on me. So yeah, there was plenty of anti-Semitism, not just in the academic circles, but also on the Hill. I was up for the job of press secretary for a congressman by the name of Kevin Brady, who represented part of Austin. He represented College whatever, Texas, where he was G.W. Bush's home congressman. And I met with his chief of staff, Doug Santilli. And Doug Santilli basically my interview was basically for 15 minutes. And it basically went like this. He was like, Aris, am I pronouncing that right? Aris. You know, Aris, that's an interesting name you have. What's the origin of that name? So I said, "Well, it's Hebrew." He was like, "Oh, well, that's very interesting, Aris." And then he faked having a call and he left. Oh wait, but before he did that, I'm sorry. This is the major part of the story. After I told him that it was a Hebrew name, he said, "Aris, one thing that the congressman prizes above all is loyalty." He's like, "Do you think that you can be loyal to the United States of America?" I was saying, "I'm from New York. What are you talking about?"
Did you decide after that if you were going to work in politics, it might be better to come back to New York?
I did.
That would be a logical decision.
Yeah, I did. I came back to New York in 2000.
And did you work in politics in New York?
Not really. I tried. Working in politics. I was up for, I actually looked towards the Hill again, and I was actually up for legislative director for a congressman by the name of Bob Ney, who may still be in prison, because he was involved in the Jack Abramoff scandal. Now, one of the reasons why I may have been one of the two finalists for legislative director is because he probably figured that I'd work well with Jack Abramoff. So, yeah, that was interesting.
So did you finally decide that politics was not going to be the thing?
Yeah, I figured, and here's what happened. Well, then came September 11th, 2001. I, that, I came back in September of 2000, trying to figure out exactly what I was going to do. Still looking for jobs on the Hill. And I figured what I might do is start a campaign consulting company. So I was on the night of September 10th into the 11th, 2001, I was designing the logo for my company. Woke up, tower's on fire. So after that, it was quite interesting. I never really got into the politics again, except I was a member of the American Association of Political Consultants, and I was asked to come down to Washington, D.C. to be a judge for their political advertisement awards. So I judged radio and print ads for that were under consideration. But the D.C. that I came down to was not the D.C. that I left. There were sandbags all over the place. The only cars in the streets were military with machine guns on the back, and the only people in the streets were soldiers. What is it? The National Guard. So I was like, this is too weird. This is not the Washington, D.C. that I remember.
Well, what made you decide to go to law school?
I decided to go to law school essentially when my Uncle Fred died. He died of lung cancer, which turned into all over cancer, basically.
Was this Rosalind's husband?
Yes, this was Rosalind's husband. He died in 2000 and